Hey everyone, and welcome back to Rowing with the Homies. I'm Finlos, and I am so glad that you're here with me. I hope that you're able to get some movement in today, to find some time to really lean into whatever it is that you're feeling today, and take some time for yourself. Remember that this is the show where we explore the deep connection between big ideas, current events, and our personal, mental, and physical health. And today I want to talk about noise, but this is more of a symbolic kind of noise. It's the kind of noise that people make to ensure that they are heard in a figurative sense. And they often use this kind of noise to quiet the insecurity that they carry. And I'm talking about the desperate performative pursuit of attention, sometimes called clout chasing. I'm going to explore how this toxic impulse has moved from social media influencers to the highest levels of political power, and the danger it poses when the pursuit of likes and outrage overrides truth and governance. And there's a couple of different aspects of this that I'm going to look at. I want to talk about the psychological reasons, perhaps why some people are driven to this sort of attention chasing, why it seems to be so aggressively male-centric, and how it acts as a cultural backlash against perceived loss of power. And so this is what's been on my mind: clout chasing. And I want to start at the top with the concept of performative governance. And this is less of the art of governing itself, when we think of things like sober, serious policy decisions and discussions, but instead governing by generating viral, polarizing media moments. But we need to really ask a fundamental question: and why might people be driven to chase this kind of attention to begin with? And at its core, clout chasing is an attempt to solve an internal deficit with external validation. It's a fundamental insecurity. And that insecurity is just shouting, "Look at me!" If somebody doesn't feel seen, then they just get louder. And when you feel insecure, you might be driven to seek immediate, highly visible acts that gain you status and recognition. I have been really curious about why this specific loud, often aggressive outrage chasing seems so predominantly centered around men. I think it boils down to a fundamental difference in how power and status have historically been defined for men, specifically through the lens of hegemonic masculinity, which is the dominant, culturally exalted form of masculinity that demands dominance and control, emotional stoicism, and a rejection of vulnerability. It's not the masculinity that most men embody, to be honest with you. At least I like to think that. But it is the one that sets the societal standard for status and legitimizes the general subordination of women and other marginalized groups, granting a patriarchal dividend to most men who adhere to it. When real world stability, like economic security, institutional authority, or traditional social roles, feels like it's declining, that core male identity feels profoundly threatened. And progressive movements over the last century have fundamentally challenged the system that once guaranteed this dominance. For men who defined their worth by this hierarchy, the move toward equality feels like a zero-sum loss of privilege. And for these people, the antidote is not introspection, but performance. If you can't feel dominant or influential in your career or your community, you must aggressively perform it on the largest stage possible. Specifically, social media and politics, where the spectacle becomes the substitute for the internal and external security that has been eroded. And the ultimate master of this seems to have been, all along, Donald Trump. He didn't just stumble into this. He is the political apotheosis of the clout chaser. His entire career has been defined by the mantra, bad publicity is sometimes better than no publicity at all. He operates in politics the way a viral content creator operates online. He weaponizes outrage. He generates attention by consistently using divisive and antagonistic language towards his opponents. And this rhetoric is designed not to persuade the middle, but to instantly activate and outrage both his base and his opponents, and therefore guarantee maximum media coverage. And this is a hyper-masculine performance of relentless, uncompromising victory, which offers an intoxicating alternative to the quiet complexity of real policy work, of real introspection, of healing, of care, of empathy, of all of the things that we really should be working towards. He is governed by the drive to use spectacle as his policy. His approach treats policy announcements, diplomatic shifts, or even budget deadlines as segments in a reality show. He's often conducted major foreign policy decisions or threats on social media, prioritizing the immediate burst of attention over the long-term stability of the policy itself. His rallies are not just campaign events, they are political revivals that continuously generate new, outrageous sound bites to dominate the news cycle for the next 24 hours. And for him, clout is the platform. The goal isn't just to win an argument, it's to force the entire system to spend every hour reacting to his latest move. He successfully blurred the line between celebrity and political power, making his personal clout the de facto platform of the presidency. And another clear example of this phenomenon, continuing down the line from the president, is from a figure like Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense. His actions and words are less about the quiet, complex work of national defense and more about generating viral, polarizing media moments. Take his recent Quantico address to a collected gathering of all of the highest ranking leaders in all of the branches of the military who he ordered to fly in from all over the world. And in the speech, he framed his directives as ending the war on warriors and a mission to rip out the social justice, politically correct, and toxic ideological garbage from the Department of Defense. He wasn't talking policy. He was making a promise to restore a threatened male hierarchy where strength and dominance, not empathy, define the leader. And this is a specific form of toxic clout chasing, generating attention by positioning oneself as the champion of a culturally aggrieved group against a perceived woke enemy. It's a pursuit of political relevance through outrage, sacrificing the sober, complex duties of a public office for the instantaneous gratification of partisan applause and viral clips. And that gets me thinking. The most dangerous thing about this behavior is the potential for harmful repercussions. Because when your goal is attention, truth and integrity become irrelevant. They are merely obstacles to be bypassed. And while political clout chasing is destructive at a macro level, the same impulse in the social media economy is corrosive to our everyday lives and relationships. For the vast majority of people, clout is not political power, it is social currency. The desire for influence, likes, shares, followers transforms social interaction from a means of connection into a transactional performance. When we are constantly chasing the dopamine hit of external validation, we sacrifice authenticity, which is the foundational bedrock of all genuine human connection. And there's several ways how this toxic chase harms us in real life. It erodes authentic relationships, because when friends or partners prioritize a viral moment over the privacy or well-being of the person they are with, the relationship is fundamentally commodified. You've replaced empathy with metrics. This creates environments of distrust where vulnerability is punished and performance is rewarded. It causes harm to mental health. The pursuit of this external validation creates a vicious addictive cycle. If you fail to get the desired engagement, your sense of self-worth plummets. This variable reinforcement is psychologically similar to gambling. You keep checking, posting, and escalating behavior, hoping for the jackpot, leading to increased anxiety, depression, and social isolation, even while being technically connected to thousands. This behavior creates unsafe environments for marginalized groups. The most insidious consequence is the creation of online toxicity that disproportionately targets women and marginalized communities. Clout chasing thrives on controversy, sensationalism, and manufactured conflict. When an influencer's primary currency is outrage, they often seek to generate it by attacking easy targets. This leads to the normalization of toxic behaviors like cyberbullying, misogynistic trolling, doxing, and targeted harassment campaigns. For women and LGBTQ+ individuals or people of color, seeking influence often means risking exposure to systemic abuse because the platform's financial incentive to promote clout or engagement overrides its ethical duty to protect its users. And one more way that it does harm is through the commodification of suffering or trauma dumping. In the relentless pursuit of engagement, some individuals turn their deepest personal crises or mental health struggles into viral, sad fishing content. This isn't genuine vulnerability. Rather, it's the calculated exploitation of suffering for likes and sympathy metrics. When an individual broadcasts highly intimate or traumatic details without context or considering the boundaries of their audience, they are essentially commodifying their pain. The goal shifts from seeking help or connection to achieving maximum emotional reaction, further distorting the difference between an authentic human moment and a piece of profitable content. In this social media economy, driven by the extreme seeking of engagement, the equivalent to the political clout chaser is Andrew Tate. Tate built an empire by weaponizing hypermasculinity and misogyny to create a mass audience of young men who feel alienated. He doesn't care about the truth or the moral harm. He cares about the subscription numbers because outrage is currency. Tate and figures like him prey on the anxiety stemming from the perceived loss of male power. When we look at the sweep of 20th and 21st century progressive movements like civil rights, feminism, LGBTQ+ rights, these were fundamentally zero-sum challenges to historical male-dominated power structures. For those who built their identity on that structure, equality doesn't feel like liberation. It feels like a loss of their historical privilege. It feels like the system has been rigged against them. The clout chaser steps in and provides a simple, aggressive answer. You aren't failing, you're being attacked. Follow me and we'll fight back. The outrage and spectacle are the substitute for the societal control they feel they forfeited. The clout becomes the new, immediate digital currency of dominance, replacing the slower, more complex currency of earned respect or institutional societal authority that is granted through consent. And of course, conservatives are not the only ones guilty of clout chasing. Where the Trumps, Tates, and Hegseths succeed in converting that outrage into power, we see an interesting contrast in figures like Chuck Schumer, the Senate minority leader, and his recent struggles. Schumer, facing intense pressure from progressives in his party, the Democrats, was criticized for not resisting the political opposition's agenda strongly enough. He was caught in a difficult bind. He is pressured to adopt an aggressive, uncompromising posture that mimics the clout chaser. When he backed a Republican-led stopgap bill to avert a shutdown before the current government shutdown that we're in, he was immediately savaged by his own progressive allies for having surrendered. Now, in the midst of the current shutdown, we see him making an even more explicit attempt to become a clout chaser. He's trying to change his staid, somewhat boring, cautious image, changing his style, posting social media clips with pugilistic tones and sharper expletives, and appearing far more aggressive in public confrontations. He's trying to capture that energy of unbridled Trumpian defiance. But this shift in style only highlights his failure to grasp the mechanics of authentic clout. He's constrained by the institution that the pure clout chasers are actively trying to destroy. His attempts to mimic that performance fails because he cannot fully commit to the central tenet of the chase, the rejection of the status quo that he himself leads. His aggressive performance feels fundamentally performative, like a politician reading a focus grouped script instead of speaking from a place of genuine, unbridled conviction. He needs governance. The others need chaos. He needs compromise. The others need viral conflict. The result is that Schumer gets the criticism from the opposition and the fury of his base, who see through the act and continue to demand that he fight for us or step aside. And so he fails to generate the desired clout and only succeeds in weakening his standing with those who want unadulterated resistance. And from him, we see the lesson that true clout chasing requires a commitment to performance over reality, a luxury most leaders of complicated institutions are unwilling to do. They cannot afford it. And it can start to feel overwhelming as we are stuck in this feedback loop. The media, as it has been shifted and shaped to meet the needs of this new clout chaser economy in both politics and in social media, they need it. The cycle is fueled by that feedback loop. And it becomes almost feels like a situation where we're helpless. And resistance to the clout chasers in power feels harder and harder. And so, what can we do? How do we fight it? And I think maybe the resistance here is just to refuse to be an audience member in the spectacle. It's to demand governance over performance. We have to starve the outrage cycle. It's hard because it's ever present. It's in our feeds. But we need to begin to starve the outrage cycle, to restrict the content that we're consuming, and seek images and videos and sound bites that are uplifting, that reinforce the resistors rather than the clout chasers, and that those who claim to be resisting are doing so with true intent and with true commitment to causes that we believe in, that we ourselves would be comfortable standing behind. We must insist on actual policy detail. When a leader makes a viral, emotional claim, we need to shift our conversation with those who we speak with back to the boring specifics. We need to demand detail. We need to avoid the spectacle and insist on substance. And we need to begin to localize our time investments. National politics is an easy home for clout chasing because the scale is so vast, allowing performance to replace proximity. And instead, we should shift our focus to the local, to support those with whom we can have direct contact, and to do grassroots work where the impact can be immediately seen and felt. And that leads me to the final segment. And today, depression feels like white noise. And it's the sense of being bombarded by an overwhelming roar of data, opinions, and manufactured crises, interspersed amongst real, actual crises as people are suffering. The emotional equivalent of the nonstop clamor of the attention economy we just discussed. It's the psychological byproduct of a world where every insecurity is fed into a machine designed to generate outrage and keep us glued to the spectacle. The loudest figures create a noise so consuming that we can no longer hear the quiet, signal-filled frequency of our own needs, of our own thoughts, of our own rhythms. Now, white noise is constant, often meaningless, and designed only to keep us from resting or remaining focused. It makes us feel overstimulated and empty at the same time. We're surrounded by the volume of people screaming for attention. But when we try to speak, our own voice is just absorbed into the hiss, the buzz, the static. And sometimes the way out of this white noise is not to scream louder, not to work harder to seek attention, but to find a space for silence. And the discipline of quiet work provides focus. A deliberate, quiet, repetitive act that cuts through the noise and allows us to hear the actual signal of our inner voice to return. So allow yourself that space. Allow yourself those moments of quiet clarity, of quiet, persistent work. Sometimes it feels like drudgery, but that is the even one step after another work of progress, of growth. But everybody's experience is their own. And I do not claim to speak for anybody but myself and how depression can feel. Wherever you are, know that you're not alone. It's okay to feel out of control, to feel untethered, to feel adrift and alone. You are not alone. I encourage you to find someone to speak with, somebody to be in a space with, someone to hear you, and for you to give that person space to be heard as well. Maybe a family member, maybe a friend, maybe a partner, maybe a professional, a therapist, a counselor, a doctor. It's okay to ask for help. As we consider the noise generated by clout chasers, our response to that noise can't be more noise. It has to be motion. It has to be commitment to process. The way through the noise of the world and the noise in our own heads is not through viral performance, but through the deliberate, honest, and quiet act of embracing the struggle of growth and of healing and of commitment to each other. Thank you for spending this time and energy with me. I'm grateful for every one of you who chooses quiet reflection over spectacle. If this episode resonated with you, please consider sharing it with a friend, sharing it on your social media feed. You can find links to comment, connect, or leave input on the website finloslives.com, or you can reach out to me on social media, or you can send an email to finlos@finloslives.com. Subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to our next conversation.